The gospel passage that was just proclaimed this morning is actually unique to the evangelist Luke, and it is the third of the four controversies that Jesus will immerse himself in when it relates to the Sabbath activity. He dares to pluck and eat morsels of corn on the Sabbath day. He heals a man with a withered hand during the Sabbath teaching. He reaches out to an ill man during the Sabbath meal. And now, he calls lovingly for that woman to come to him, that bent-over woman. And he reaches out and heals her, setting her free from her physical ailment, and more so, freeing her from the stigma, the prejudice, the disrespect of her own family and peers who have ostracized her. For 18 years, this woman has been so crippled over that all she sees is the ground beneath her feet. She barely can see the faces of anyone around her, and certainly cannot see the smug and disdainful looks given her way. She's grown accustomed to her condition and feels unworthy to approach or address the teacher to ask for mercy, if not healing. And yet, Jesus does see her. He calls out to her, "Come, come to me." He lays hands upon her, and she walks upright once again. The text tells us not only upright, but straight up, with strength, with vigor. And then we hear of Jesus being once more chastised. He's told off by the community leaders. And then we hear, for a second time in 2 weeks, those familiar words coming from Jesus' lips. "You hypocrites! If you can water your cattle on Sabbath day, surely I can release this woman from such affliction." Jesus sets a rightful and high moral authority over the power structure, elevating nurturing works of compassion and dignity over the constricting laws and customs of that day. Here again, Jesus emphasizes division, if not conflict, as he openly challenges the status quo of tradition and practice. Now, lest we forget the main figure in this gospel passage in favor of the larger theological picture of Jesus and the powerful who surround him, we need to turn to that woman beset with such a debilitating, painful existence. She's not merely bent over. She is bent over. She lives in that state. She lives with pain and discomfort. She lives with the tradition and even the theology of that day that says that somehow an inner spirit of evil has taken her over, and somehow it is deserving. She's held captive in this deformed condition, physically and culturally. Society has defined her, restrained her. No, not society alone. No, but the very people that she lives with for the last 18 years. Those who have been her neighbors, her friends, her classmates, and the list goes on. People who once knew her and accepted her, but now have narrowly defined and rejected her. I ask you to imagine yourself in this condition this morning. From birth, we learn to play by the rules. We've learned from experience what happens when we do not abide by the customs, the mores, the rules set up by those in authority, those with more power, more control than we hold. We too begin to bend over at the burden of others' definitions of who we are and who is in and who's out, how to act with power and how to function without power. We gradually bend, brought low under the restrictions imposed by us, by others, through custom, through prejudice, through standing in society, through cultural advantage that some have and some do not. The late civil rights activist and national legislator John Lewis consistently spoke of engaging in good trouble, in addressing the inequality and the injustice long embedded in American life. He understood the necessity of straining to look up and accept the compassionate spirit of God's holy healing despite the challenges of established avenues of constrainment and harsh use of power. Each of us have had those moments where, as persons of God, we have heard His call and invited His healing touch that we might stand just a little taller, a little bit more proud, as one of God's created, one of God's own. For myself, I have realized over time that various experiences like yourselves have challenged me to become not less, but to become more, to stand tall, to be unafraid of societal constrictions and regulations, and to embrace the healing power of God. Some years ago, more than I like to remember some days, I fell in love. Oh, she was just such a wonderful person. Beautiful in my eyes, talented, gifted, a wonderful woman. And so I asked her to marry me. And for some reason, she said yes. And so my wife, Tony, and I became among the early interracial couples to be married in the state of Maryland, following the Loving v. Virginia court decision. In 1991, I was asked to identify with the hopes and the dreams of the advocacy group Integrity, seeking the full affirmation and participation of the LGBTQ community in the full life of our church. Could I really proclaim, loud and proud, that affirmation, standing up for the rights of others, created equally in the face of God? When I interviewed a priest as an associate from my staff, would I identify her only as an ordained gay woman? Or could I see her as a fruitful, effective, equal partner in ministry with and for all in our congregation? In both your personal and professional lives, I'm sure that you too have had to decide whether you would hear the word of God, that call to stand tall, to act boldly, or to play by the rules, accept the powerlessness of the situation, and go along to get along. I confess that there have been those times for me when I preferred to look downward, to be bent over with burden, unwilling to reach out and reach up. I know those times as secrets in my heart, sinful scars upon my soul. And I know those times when I chose to accept the affirming call of God and receive and act upon that holy, healing touch. The late, highly esteemed theologian Walter Brueggemann writes about prophetic imagination. He writes it as an integral piece of our life as Christ followers. We're asked to imagine the world as other than the way it is and the way that it is presented to us. To become imaginative is to believe and to trust both ourselves and those around us. It is to know of the God who causes endings and causes new beginnings through and in us. It is to lift our sight from the earth and look up and imagine what can be. To live in that belief, despite how others might define us, constrain us, or restrict us. It is to know that in the end, that those who choose to live in their own hypocrisy will live in shame. And we choose to live in the image of that woman of old, who would rejoice, seeing, embracing the wonderful works of God through the Son, Jesus the Christ, working through us here